So glad to have you with us, especially on this special Shabbat worship in pink, where we come together in solidarity and strength and hope for those who are struggling with cancer and their families who support them. We're going to begin our service. Jordan Foreman will be leading us this morning. You're going to find us on page 61 with Ma Tovu. Page 61 in our blue Sidurim.
Ma Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Ma Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Vani Barov Chastecha V'Veitecha Shtachav Alecha Koshemina Va'ani tefilati Lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim Barov Chastecha Ahaneni Be'emet Yishecha. We turn to page 65, and we rise and we give thanks for so many things. Birchot HaShachar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan לנו v'bina להבחינה בין יום ובין לילה.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani b'tzamo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani ben chorim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokei achivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka aretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asali kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei kaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anotein laya'ef kawach. Please be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Utenenu hayom v'chol yom l'chenu chesed rachamim beinecha v'nei choro enu v'tigmelenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim el amo Yisrael. Yiratzon milfanecha Adonai Elohai v'Elohei avotai. Ashreinu matov chokenu manaim koraleinu mayafa yerushatenu Ashreinu she'anachnu mashkimu marivim erev avoker v'yomim pamayim bechol yom Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad B'Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Moed Atahu Adshenu Olam Mishnu Olam Haba Olam Haba Kadeshim Kamati Shemecha V'Kadeshim Chabi Olamecha V'Vishu Achadim V'Olam Kadesh Et Shimcha Amati Shemecha V'Kadesh Et Shimcha Chabi Olamecha V'Vishu Adcha Tarim V'Tagbiyach Karnenu Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh Et Shimcha Barabim. Let's continue on the bottom of page 68 with the bottom two paragraphs from Sukkah 49b. Rabbi Elazar said, doing righteous deeds of charity is greater than offering all of the sacrifices, as it is written. Doing charity and justice is more desirable to Adonai than sacrifice. Rabbi Elazar further said, the reward for charity depends upon the degree of loving kindness, as it is written, sow according to your charity, but reap according to your loving kindness. Our rabbis taught deeds of loving kindness are superior to charity in three respects. Charity can be accomplished only with money. Deeds of loving kindness can be accomplished through personal involvement as well as with money.
Okay. So it's
Charity
only
can be given only to the
a
poor.
little while.
Deeds of loving kindness can be done for both rich and poor. Charity applies only to the living. Deeds of loving kindness apply to both the living and the dead. Bottom of page 70. Yehi ratzon milfanech Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu shetitein l'chelkenu b'toratecha b'nihyeh mitalmidav shel Aharon haKohen ohev shalom v'rodef shalom ohev v'briot u'mekorbana la Torah. Those in mourning, those observing your yahrzeit, please rise for Kaddish to Rabbanan. We ask everyone on Zoom to please enable your microphones. Page 71, Kaddish to Rabbanan. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabach v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv imru amen yehi shmei rabba mevarach v'elam olamei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemedi kudasha v'yichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'olma v'imru amen al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Talmidehon v'al kol Talmidehon v'al kol man askin b'oraita Div atra, hadain, v'div v'chol, atar v'atar. Yehei lahon olachon, shlama rabba. China v'chista v'rachamin, v'chayin arichin, u'mizon aravicha. U'for kana min kodam avuhon div yishmaya v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim tovim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu barachamav ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We will continue with our daily psalm, page 81, Psalm 30. Mizmor shir chanukah tabayit l'ravihid armim chanukah makta oivai li'elahai shadavatu l'vatavini. Ahafachta mispri l'macholi pitachta sakihi vatazreni simcha למען יזמרך כבוד ולא ידום, Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. We once again ask everyone to enable their microphones. Those in mourning observing a yard site, please rise for Kaddish Tome, page 82. Yitgadal Kadash Shemei Rabbah Yalma Divara Kirute V'yamlich Malchute B'chayechon V'yomechon V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman Kari V'imru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Olamei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yipa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudasha b'rechu. Eila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran bi'oma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, v'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Amen.
We now move from Birchot HaShachar into our Pesukei de Zimra service. Please rise. Baruch She'amar, page 83. Baruch She'amar v'haya'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Oseh v'reishit Baruch Omer v'yoseh Baruch Gozer u'mekayim Baruch merachem al haaretz Baruch merachem al habriot Baruch meshalem sachar tov l're'av Baruch Chailad v'kayam lanetzach Baruch podel matzil Baruch Shemo Baruch Atanai Olam Elkalam Baruch Aman Amulam Aviyam Amashvach Mor Shachal V'Dalam Yachid Chei HaOlam Mimelech Meshubach Umfor Adei Ad Shemo Hagadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Mehulal Bati Ishbachot. Please remain standing. Page 92. We give thanks to God on this, the week where in our Parsha we read about the first person who was a monotheist, Avraham Avinu. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chasto. Hodu le'Elohei ha'Elohim ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai ha'adonim ki le'olam chasto. Yoseh niflaot gedolot levado ki le'olam chasto. Yoseh hashamayim b'tvuna ki le'olam chasto. Leroka haaretz al hamayim ki le'olam chasto. Lioseh orim gedolim ki le'olam chasto. V'et hashemesh lememshelet bayom ki le'olam chasto. Ereyach v'chochavim lememshelot balayla ki le'olam chasto. Lemakei Mitzrayim b'ivchoreihem ki le'olam chasto. Vayotze Yisrael mi'etocham ki le'olam chasto. Biyad chazaka u'vizroa netuya ki le'olam chasto. L'gozer yamsuf migzarim ki le'olam chasto. Ve'ever Yisrael betocho ki le'olam chasto. V'ni'er paro v'chelo ve'yamsuf ki le'olam chasto. Lemolichamo bamidbar ki le'olam chasto. Lemakei melachim gedolim ki le'olam chasto. Vayahrog melachim adirim ki le'olam chasto. Lesichon melech ha'emori ki le'olam chasto. Uleog melech ha'bashan ki le'olam chasto. V'natan artzam le'nachala ki le'olam chasto. Nachala le'Yisrael ado ki le'olam chasto. Shebeshif lenu zachar lanu ki le'olam chasto. Vayifrekenu mitzareinu ki le'olam chasto. Noten lechem lechol basar ki le'olam chasto. Hodu le'el hashamayim ki le'olam chasto. Yililai lai 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 lai. Yililai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yililai lai 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 lai. Ranenu tzadikim baranai lashim navati la.
You may be seated.
Nafshenu chitala Adonai Ezreinu maginenu kivo yismach libenu kivo shem kodsho vatachnu yichastecha Adonai aleinu kasher yichalnu lach mizmor shir leyom haShabbat tov l'Adon l'Adonai l'zamer shimchal yon l'agibavach yishbar le'adach sili v'inetzo b'voshim Od yenuvum besivar shinim rananim yikyu lagi kasharonai tsuri below avla tabo. Page 95, and I'm alakila. I think I'm about the Mikola my man, we went to Ich born my limits makal na masa. Edo takhanam nu me the betkhana avakura sharonai. The orach yamihim ich born my lilamis makal na masa. Shemesh amevo shemro. Behurachum yakaper v'lo yashkit v'hirbala shiva povlo yirkol chamato Adonai Oshia hamelech yaneinu v'yom korinu. Ashrei, page 96. Ashrei Oshvei v'techa od yalu chasela. Ashrei am shechach halosh am shenai lo hati lal ravid am yekal Tilat Adonai edaber pi vivarech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech yach me'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Shatan and I, Alan, I became as the Lord. I be a deal. Teacher, hello, Shiva, Matu. Asher Shalom, Zero, and I love us. My art, I'm a kosher, but my shaman, I'm much part of community. I'm not my tears, I'm a perkea, everyone was a cave, I'm not here today.
Oh, God, it's raining. Oh, my God.
Adonai Shomerek Yirmiyatom Yamana Yodev Rishaim Yaveit Yimochana Lamelo Action Rador. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Kitav Zama Elohim Kina Ihim Navatila Abra Shalom Khanes Roshel. I'm not calling them is part of that. I mean, I don't have much pills. I mean, I heard something that I'm not Magid Rav Yaakov Chukav Mishpatav Yisrael Lo Asachin Lechogoy Mishpatim Ba'Yeraum. Hallelujah. Page 99. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Adonai Min Hashemayim. Hallelujah. Bamromim. Hallelujah. Bahayarem Kerlem Otilalacho Chasidav Limesralam Kirovo. Hallelujah. Page 100. Hallelujah. Shilonai Shir Chada Ashila Tobi Kala Chasidim. Lesor machem beziki minik breghem bechavlei varzel asop emishpak katuv adar hulucho chasitav. Hallelujah. 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 El bekodsho. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Berkia Usob. Hallelujah, 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 Vigevurotav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Kira of good love. Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, benevel vechinor. Hallelujah, 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 betov umachol, hallelujah, hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 b'tzitzilei shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tzitzilei tshuva. Kol haneshama tehalleluya, kol haneshama tehalleluya. Kol haneshama tehalleluya, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehalleluya, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Yameim, Baruch Adonai Tzin Shkin Shalom Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael Osei Niflaot Levado Ubaruch Shem Kudo Le'olam Yimelech V'do Kol Haaretz. Amen v'amen. Please rise as we turn to page 101. Vayevarech David et Adonai le'nei kol hakachal vayomer David Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael Atahu Adonai Elohim asher bacharta be'Abraham v'hotzeto me'ur kasdim v'sam tashmo Abraham u'matzata elevavo ne'mana lefanecha v'charot imo abrihit lateit. V'hayam bakata lifnehem v'yavru v'toch hayam v'yabasha v'yatrod fehem yishlach davim tzolot kimo even b'mayim azihim v'yoshel b'yamachu et Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim v'yar Yisrael et hayad hagdolah asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim v'yiru ha'am et Adonai v'yaminu b'Adonai Moshe Avdo Az Yashir Moshe Uvenei Yisrael Et Hashira Hazot Ladonai Vayomru Leimor Ashira Ladonai Ki Ga'oga Sus V'rokvo Arama Vayam Ozi vezimratya vayehili lishua ze'eli ve'yan ve'hu Elohei aviv marom amen hu Adonai shmil kama Adonai shemo markavot
Shemo markavot
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh Nohora tehilot Oh seifelen Atiti michadu Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Ki l'Adonai hamloch ha'moshel ba'goyim ya'alu moshiyim b'har Tzion lishpot et ha'esav V'aytal Adonai hamluchav V'haya Adonai le'melech ha'kol ha'aretz V'yom ha'hu Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
Please be seated as we transition into our Shacharit service with Nishmat Kol Chai, page 104.
Nishmat Kol Chai Tevarech et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu V'ruach kol basar Tevarim Elohim Zechar Malkin Tamim Elohim Elohim Talam Elohim Elohim Melech Mashiach V'ramatzum V'rech Merchem Rechoyer Tzarvetzu Kavi Elohim Melech Ala Ata Elohim Rishon Elohim Yilafinu Malay Shirakayamo Generina Kamangalav. Okay, everybody should plug the bottom. Nehalel Chaun Shabecham Va'ercham Arekachim Kodshecha Kamur LeDavid Barchi Nafshi Adonai V'chol Kravai Etchim Kodsho Ha'el B'tatzumot Uzecha Hagado B'kvod Shemecha Hagibor Lanatzach V'noraben Aratecha HaMelech HaYoshev Al Kisei Ram V'nisaha.
Yasher Koach to Jordan Forden for leading us this morning. It's now our pleasure to invite Adriana Castiglione to lead the rest of our service. Adriana was bat mitzvahed earlier in the year in Minnesota, but through our Elman Chapel. Welcome to the new brave world. So we were glad that we were able to be there with her family, and now her family is centering around a congregation. So we welcome them. We welcome Adriana, and she will be continuing in the middle of page 105 with Shochein Ad.
Shochein ad marom v'kadosh shemo. V'chatuv arnu tzadikim b'Adonai li'asharim neva tehila b'fi yasharim titala uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach uvyoshon chasidim titramam uvkerev kedashim titgadash uvmakalod rivevot amecha beit Yisrael. Lehodot, lehalel, leshabeach, lepa'er, leramem, lehader, levarech, lele, ukales, akol divrei shirot v'tishbachot, David ben Yishai avdecha meshichecha.
Please rise, page 106.
Yishtabach shimcha lad malkeinu. Brachot v'hodot me'ata ve'ad olam Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol b'tishbachot El ha'hodot Adonai niflaot Habocher b'shirei zimra Melech elchei ha'olamim Yigadol v'yigada shemei rabbah Be'alma divra kirtei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechan uvyomechan uchaydecho beit Yisrael Bagala uvizman kariv v'imru amen Yehei shmei Rabba mavarach le'olam u'me'amaya yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal shmei dechudesh abrichu Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Baruch hu Adonai ha'mavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai ha'mavorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer v'rei choshech Oseh shalom v'rei atak.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer or v'rei choshech Oseh shalom v'rei atako.
Please be seated as we continue at the bottom of page 107.
Hakol yoducha ve'akol yeshavchucha. אפס פרטך גליני למות המשיח, ואין דמלך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גדלו וטובו מלא עולם, דת ותבונה סובבים אותו. המתגאה על חיות הקודש ונהדר בכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם בדעת, בבינה ובהשכל. כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה נאה זיוום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם, פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמוע, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש ויזרח אור, ראה והתקין סהרת לבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש. לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים. וכולם הודקים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה בשירה ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים, ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל. להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה, ובנימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ביראה. קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו. והאבנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים ומצרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נמותיתנו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
We continue at the top of page 111 as we gather our tzitzit in anticipation of the Shema, pages 112 and 113.
אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו. Ki el pol Yeshua tata uvone v'acharta mikolam v'lashon v'kerev tani l'shimcha hagadol sela be'emet lahodot lecha ol yachadcha be'ahava Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha Ve'chol levavcha uve'chol nafshecha uve'chol me'otecha Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele Asher anuchi mitzavecha Hayom alavavecha V'shinantam b'vanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech Uv'shechbecha uv'kumecha Uchshartam layot al yadecha V'hailot atafot b'neinecha Uchtaftam amezuzot beitecha uvisharecha.
We now gather our tzitzit, and we continue with the final paragraph of the Shema, top of page 113.
Vayomer Adonai al Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta alehem v'asu lahem tzitzit. Al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam v'natenu al tzitzit. Hakanaf b'til techelet v'haya lechem letzitzit. Uritem oto, uschartem ekol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam, v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem. Le'man tizkeru v'asitem ekol mitzvotai, v'item kedoshim le'elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Lador vador hukayam ushmo kayam v'chison achon u'malchuto v'emunato lad kayamet. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu, Malkeinu melech avoteinu, go'aleinu go'el avoteinu, yotzreinu tzur yeshuateinu, podeinu matzilinu me'lam shemecha, ein Elohim zulatecha. Ezrat avoteinu atahu me'olam. Tehillah la'el elyon baruch hu, Vorach Moshe v'nei Yisrael, Le'echanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam. Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai, Mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Norati lod osef eleh. Shira chadasha shivchu gelim l'mshimcha svatayam, Yachad kulam hoduvim l'chu v'yamru, Adonai imloch le'olam ba'ed. Tur Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, uvdeichinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
Before we begin the Amidah, which will begin on page 115b and 116, and then silently for the remainder, Cookie Aftergut will give an introduction for the Amidah on this Shabbat worship in pink.
Baruch atah Adonai. Sorry.
My name is Cookie Aftergut. I am a breast cancer thriver. I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer in 2002. So this past August was 19 years. I went through surgery. I had 8 rounds of chemotherapy and 33 radiation treatments. After my treatments, when the doctors told me that I didn't need to be seen for 3 months, and that should have been music to my ears, it really was not. I was frightened because I was not being watched as carefully as I had been before, and I felt broken. And I decided it was time for me to have a healing, a cleansing of my soul and my spirit. I had never been to a mikveh in my life. Being raised in this congregation, mikvahs were not very common when I was growing up. And I went. And I can tell you from my personal experience, when I recited the Shehecheyanu prayer at the mikveh, and I immersed myself 3 times, I felt God's presence. He enabled me to recover, and with that, in 2006, my husband and I started a nonprofit foundation called Camouflage. This foundation helps women that are going through cancer treatment, if it's breast cancer or whatever cancer they're experiencing. So we started this little foundation, and we were holding our meetings at Nordstrom's at Perimeter Mall each month for newly diagnosed cancer patients. Of course, the pandemic kind of hit us hard. We were not able to have our meetings in-house, but I have to tell you that I've sent out over 90 goodie boxes to women that I will never meet. And this is to support their journey through cancer treatment. Attitude is one thing that helped me tremendously get through my journey. Cancer was not something that our family didn't know about, because my grandmother passed away at age 58 of breast cancer. Back then, there were no mammographies, and they certainly didn't have the treatments to treat her. My mother was diagnosed at age 70 with breast cancer. So when I was diagnosed at age 62, I was familiar with cancer, and I just said, okay, I have it, I'll just go forward. And honestly, that's what I did. I did everything that the doctors told me to do and just didn't question. I just went forward. So attitude is something that we all have. And if you are experiencing a life-threatening illness, you just have to have a positive attitude. Now, I like to say that, number one, you cannot change the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And that's what I did. And I wish you all happy sailing. Thank you.
Cookie, thank you for putting things in perspective for us. Thank you. We now rise for the Amidah beginning on page 115b.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chastei Avot Umevi goel livnei v'neihem L'ma'an shemo be'ahava Melech ozer v'hokeinu Mashiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham v'hokei Sarah Atah gibor le'olam Adonai Mechei metim atah Rad le'hoshia Mashiv haruach l'marid hagashem Mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechayim etim barchamim rabim. Somech noflim verofech cholim, umatir asurim, kayem emunato, lishenei afar. Michamach abagver timido melech, melech memeit mchayim utzmiach neshua. V'ne'eman atah l'chayot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei ha'meitim. Nekadesh shimcha ba'olam, keshem shemakdishim ata b'shmei marom, kakatuv al yad neviyecha, v'kara ze el ze v'yamar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech ol haaretz kivodo. Az b'kol rash gadol, adir v'chazak mashmi'im kol, mitnasim l'mat serafim, l'matam baruch yomeru, baruch kivod Adonai mimkomo. במקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, וקרוב בימינו לעולם ותשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך. כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ונצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפי אלוהים יש לעולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Ose shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu aleinu ve'ol kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
Standing Kaddish Shalem, page 138.
Yikarav yikarash me rabba ve'amad yivrar kirte ve'amlich machute ve'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedecho bet Yisrael v'agalav yisman kari ve'imeru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach u'olam u'lamei alamaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitvar v'yitruman v'yitnaseh Mitadar vitala vitala shmei kudusha brichu la'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tishbechata v'nechemata damiram be'alma ve'imeru amen. Titkabal tzotanu v'oton dechol Yisrael kadam avahon divishmaya ve'imeru amen. Yehi shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
Adriana Yasher Koach. Thank you very much for doing that. I was talking to Adriana's father yesterday, Dennis, and we were saying how fitting it is, and I know Adriana was meaningful to her too, to participate particularly in this Shabbat in worship in pink and to have a female Shlichat Tzibor, which was wonderful. So thank you again, Adriana. We really appreciate it. The Torah study session will be beginning in 5 minutes. Paul Feldman will be, I think I'm taking the rabbi's part, sorry.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do if you do all that? Thank you, Jordan. And again, thank you, Adriana, for wonderful leadership. Torah study will be on our other Zoom platform. We're not yet back in the building for Torah study, so those of us who are here will be with us for our Torah service, but those on Zoom can make their way over to the other Zoom room where they will find Paul Feldman and others learning together for Parshat Lech Lecha. In this room, we're going to continue on page 139 for our Torah service. We're going to be using all of our spiritual spaces, all of our amuds, our lower and our upper bima. Bob Tepper knows where you're supposed to go, so if you have any questions when you come up for an honor, you just ask him. He knows exactly where you're supposed to be. This is the floor podium. This is the rabbi's podium. Sorry, let me do that again. That is the floor podium. This is the rabbi's podium, and that's the Torah podium. So if you, whatever one you're assigned to go to, now you know where to go. We're going to continue page 139 with the Torah service.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'yeine k'ma'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai ozi amo yitein Adonai Yivarech Ramo Bashalom Av HaRachamim Heitiva B'Rtzonecha Et Zion Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim Ki vecha leva patachnu melech el ramanisa adon olamim vayehi bin Aharon vayomer Moshe kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oyevecha v'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah ki mitzion tetzei Torah u'devar Adonai miYerushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Liamo Yisrael, B'Kedushato.
God of old, we give thanks for moments of wonder and awe, of righteousness and charity, for the freedom to do your will. Let your mysteries unfold around us, guide us, shield us, lift us from narrow places, from fear and despair, into lives of service, into lives of celebration. Teach us to use our hours with care and our words as tools of praise. The world is beautiful, marvelous in opportunity, joyous in energy, pulsing with excitement, vibrant in youth, wise in years, amazing with vitality, fantastic in all life, a place of love and of hope. Teach us to use our hands to build and our hearts as a beacon of joy. God of all being, let us use the gift of redemption from slavery to freedom, from despair to hope, as an instrument of holiness, celebrating the glory and beauty of creation, a remembrance of the exodus of Egypt.
Be'yan arachetz, velish me kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar tushbechan. Be'yan arachetz, be'yan arachetz, velish me kadisha, kadisha yakira, Anna imara tushbechan, Yehi ra'ava kodamach, Detiftach libi bihoraita, Metashlim mishalin delibi, Veliba dechol amach Yisrael, Letavo lechaim, Velishlam, Amen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol.
Gadlu Adonai iti uneromema shemo yachtav lecha Adonai hagedula v'hagevura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz kicho b'shamayim uvaretz lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'hamitnaseh lechol lerosh romemu romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu v'hishtachavu lahadom raglav kadoshu romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtachavu V'hishtachavu Lehar Kadeshaho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Please be seated. Our Torah reading is going to begin at Genesis chapter 16, verses 1, page 86. I'll invite Linda Lippett to come to the Torah podium, and Shauna Duquette will begin our Aliyah with the first blessings, page 86, chapter 16, verse 1.
V'yazor v'yigim v'shil chol chosim bo v'nomar meina kol avu gud Eloheinu unakavod la Torah tamod. Abba Yonatan B'Yehudi Rishon, Baruch Shatan Torah Yisrael B'Kedushato, V'atem Avikim Aleichem, Chaim Kulchem Hayom.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamorach.
Baruch HaNevarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim, V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. V'sarai Eshet Avram, Lo Yalda Lo V'la Shivchat Mitzrit Ushma Chagav V'tomer Sarai El Avram Hinena Atzarani Adonai Miledet Bana El Shivchati Ulai Evne Mimena Vaishma Avram L'chol Sarai Vatikach Sarai Eshet Avraham Et Hagar HaMitzrit Shivchata Miketz 10 Shanim Lashevet Avram Be'eretz Canaan Vatitein Ota Lavraham Isha Leisha Vayavo El Hagar Vateret Vatire Et Tirta V'takel Gvireineha V'tomer Sarai El Avraham Chamas Alecha Anochi Netati Shivchati Behekecha V'tireh Ki harata V'ekel Beineha Yishpot Adonai Beini Uveinecha Vayomer Avraham El Sarai Hine Shivchatech B'yadech Aseh Lahatov B'einayich V'ta'ana Sarai V'tivrach mipaneha. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen.
Our next aliyah will be verse 7. Rosalind Conter will be doing this virtually after Susan Sandler offers her comment on the Parsha.
Abraham is instructed by God to go forth, to engage in a journey of faith. He is asked to leave his native land and go to the land that God will show him. He was faced with having to leave what was comfortable and familiar to him. We understand the directive, lech, going forward. But why does God include the second part, lecha, which is translated as to you? It reflects the need for Abraham to turn inward, to search and discover his potential. Was he open to this journey? Did he feel he could accomplish it? For Abraham to engage in a physical journey, we can reflect and see that he did have God as his partner. Certainly, Abraham must have experienced doubts and likely knew that he would make mistakes along the way. But he held on to the goal and believed in his potential. His faith and perhaps courage helped him to learn who he was and what he was meant to do. He became aware of a larger purpose and was intent on pursuing it. We are here together sharing in our annual Worship in Pink Shabbat. We are focused on celebrating the lives of those who have thrived against breast cancer, as well as remember loved ones we have lost. I imagine that each of us has been touched in some way, whether by a family member or a friend. We know someone whose life has been impacted by breast cancer. For years, I had wanted to join in to support and participate in the Susan G. Komen 3-day walk. In order to do this, one has to move out of their comfort zone. Even when knowing that the rewards can be great, it requires a level of faith, strength, and stamina. Not meaning to compare myself to Abraham, but when I learned that the Parsha for worship in pink was Lech Lecha, my immediate response was, let me offer a Torah comment. Lech Lecha, go forth. It resonated with me. I had made the decision to go forth. I was touched and invited to become a member of the incredible Angels for Angels team, led by Rena Wolf, who has been joined by numbers of women and men over the past 15 years. I chose with pride and honor to embark on my personal journey to walk in the 3-day walk in November, walking 60 miles over 3 days. As my husband noted in his moment of Torah this week in the e-blast, many of us likely have had our own lech moments when we are called upon to act, asking us to look inward in serious reflection and consideration while knowing that we have God's reassuring presence. I have. I set my goal and feel positive and proud that come November 21st, I will have walked 60 miles to help eradicate breast cancer. As sung by Debbie Friedman in her beautiful song, Lechi Lach. Lechi Lach, to a land that I will show you. Lech Lecha, to a place you do not know. Lechi Lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. May each of our Lech Lecha moments bring blessing to us and to others.
Amen. Ta'amod Rivka B'Aaron B'Ahuva Sheni. The second Torah reading can be found Genesis chapter 16, verse 7, page 87 in the Chumash.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai Merach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'yimatzah malach Adonai al ayin hamayim bamidbar al ha'ayin baderech shor vayomer Hagar shivchat sarai emizeh ba'at vayaner el terechi vatomer mipnei Sarah gvirti Anochi berachem vayomer laha malach Adonai shuvi el gvirtech v'titani tachad yadeha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'talpenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. I invite Sharon Newman to the floor podium to recite the blessings after Linda Lippett offers a Torah comment.
So, this next parsha I'm going to be reading has an interesting contrast. The angels inform Hagar that her son is to be named Yishmael, because God heard, Yishmael, God heard him, heard her rather, and therefore had given her him. But in the next line, Hagar labels God El Roi, the God who sees. So is it hearing or seeing? We are told that listening is the most important sense that we have. That's why we say Shema Yisrael and not Ro'eh Yisrael. That seeing can divert our attention to things. But for Hagar, it was the seeing which was of most importance. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about. When is seeing preferred? When is listening preferred? Don't we need both in order to get a full picture?
Ta'amod, Bat Shabbat Yehoshua Shlishi. We're now chapter 16, verse 10, page 87.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer la malach Adonai havar be'etzarech v'lo yisaper merov. Vayomer la malach Adonai Heini Hinachara v'yaldat ben v'karat shemo Yishmael ki shomei Adonai el einav v'hu yiyeh pere adam yado b'chol yad kol bo V'yad pnei kol echav v'yishkan v'tikra Shem Adonai hadaver elecha ata el ro'i ki amarta hagam halom Ra'iti acharei ro'i al kein kara be'er lachai ro'i hinei ben kadesh uvein bered Vatelech Hagar Lavraam ben Vayikra Avraham Shem beno Asher Yaldat Hagar Yishmael V'Avram Ben Shmonim Shana V'Sheshanim Neledet Hagar et Yishmael Lavram.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yamod Rachmiel ben Shmuel Revi'i. Our fourth aliyah is being taken. Oh.
Michael Lannister Livy? He's not on.
Yamdu Michael ben Chaim v'Chayo v'et Esther bat Fegi Keli Rivi'i. Our fourth Aliyah can be found chapter 17, verse 1, page 89.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam v'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayehi Avram ben Tishim shana v'tesha shanim. Vayera Adonai el Avram. Vayomer elav ani el Shaddai hitalech lefanai v'ye tamim. V'et navriti beini uvenecha v'yarbelcha b'mod me'od. Vayipol Avram al panav v'eraber ito Elohim lemor. Ahani nevriti itach v'hayita li'av hamon goyim v'lo yikarei od et shimcha Avram v'haya shimcha Avraham ki av hamon goyim netaticha v'hifreiti odcha b'mod me'od netaticha legoyim u'melachim mimcha yetzeu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher notan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam notar b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
The next Aliyah is chapter 17, verse 7. This will be in honor of David and Sheila Edelman, or in honor of David's birthday. They are virtual, so they will enable their microphones and say the blessing after Betty Bear offers her comment. Nope? Okay. Oh, after. Okay. So we're going to move on with the Aliyah. David, if you'll say David and Sheila, if you'll say the blessing. Verses 7 on page 90.
Baruch Adonai Merach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Makimoti epriti beini uvenecha uvein zaracha acharecha l'rorotam livrit olam להיות לך לאלוהים וזרעך אחריך ונתתי לך וזרעך אחריך את ארץ מגוריך את כל ארץ כנען לאחוזת עולם והייתי להם לאלוהים ויאמר אלוהים אל אברהם ואתה בריתי תשמור אתה וזרעך אחריך לדורותם זאת בריתי אשר תשמרו ביני וביניכם ובין זרעך אחריך הימו לכם כל זכר ונמלתם את בשר עורלתכם והיה להיות פרי ביני וביניכם ובין 8 ימים ימו לכם כל זכר לדורותיכם יליד בית ומקנה כסף מכל בני נכר אשר לא מזרעך הוא ימול יליד ביתך מקנת כספך והייתה בריתי בבשרכם לברית עולם וירא זכר אשר לא ימול את בשר עורלתו ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מעמיה את בריתי הפר ויאמר אלוהים אל אברהם שרי אשתך לא תקרא שמה שרי כי שרה שמך וברכתי אותך וגם נתתי ממנה לך בן וברכתיה והייתה לגויים, מלכי עמים ממנה יהיו, ויפול אברהם על פניו ויצחק, ויאמר בליבו, הלבן 100 שנה יוולד, ועם שרה הבה 90 שנה תלד.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emes, v'chayei olam notav v'tefenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen. Before we offer the next comment and the next aliyah, I want to offer a blessing to David Edelman. There he is on my screen. Sorry, you keep moving around on my screen. Will you guys stay still? Okay, perfect. It is quite a treat for us to be able to offer David and Sheila a blessing on David's birthday. Many of us know David. I'm sure most of us in this room know David and Sheila, and just the incredible bond and relationship that they have. They really definitely take sickness and in health, those vows, extremely seriously, and they've been such a role model to all of us on how love overcomes. And so it is wonderful to be able to be here and to offer David this blessing, and by extension Sheila as well, as they continue on their amazing journey of love, of companionship, of partnership in making not just their own community a better place, but our community and this world so much better. יהי רצון בפניך, נא אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתשלח ברכה וחזקה והצלחה וכל דברים טובים. May you, David, be blessed and your family be blessed with strength, with courage, with great resilience, with joy and blessing, with simcha, and with all those things that make life the vibrant, beautiful thing that it is. May you continue to feel that love and that blessing from your community, from your family, and may this day of your birthday extend into the weeks and months to come as we celebrate together. Amen.
Amen. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. And David, we hope you get to Lech Lecha, to go out for your birthday. Good luck.
I invite Barbara Feinberg as our next aliyah. I invite her up to our upper podium as Betty Bear will introduce this reading, this next reading, which you'll find on page 92, verse 18. She will introduce it as Barbara makes her way up to this upper podium.
I'm going to talk actually about the last aliyah that Jordan just read, and that one focuses on the covenant or the deal that Abraham and Sarah must agree to. God promises them many descendants, even though at this point Sarah is childless and she is 90 years old, and Abraham is almost 100. In exchange, they must promise to circumcise all males in their household, now and forever. In my mind, this covenant is a true test of faith and commitment to a forthcoming promise. Abraham doesn't wait until Isaac is born to perform this act of faith. He does it right away. In an earlier part of this parsha, the Torah tells us that Abraham trusted the Lord and deemed it as righteous merit on his part. Many years ago, on a Federation mission to Israel, I listened to a young woman discussing how differently we would today view someone like Abraham, who hears a voice that told him to leave his father's house and business and to destroy his father's inventory on his way out of town. And now we learn how this same voice promises children at 190 years of age and promises descendants too numerous to count, and then this same voice instructs him to inflict bodily pain on himself and others. If there had been a psychiatrist or psychologist in biblical times, they would have had a heyday of theories and explanations. However, as Rabbi Bradley Artson points out in his book, The Bedside Torah, biblical and rabbinic understanding of faith is radically different. Our parsha shows Abraham filled with tensions and doubt. He worries about his lack of heirs, the state of his covenant with God, plus his relations with his neighbors. In this parsha, Abraham comes to understand that faith is not the passive acquiescence to an idea, nor does faith require the obedient stifling of doubt. Rather, Abraham learns that faith is a willingness to trust through one's tensions and despite one's doubts. Faith, then, is trust. When we face physical difficulties, whether that is cancer or even if we are in great physical or emotional pain, it is often easy to wonder if we have done something to deserve this diagnosis or this suffering, and if in fact God is somehow punishing us. However, it is my sincere belief that this is not God's punishment, but perhaps a test of our own faith. This covenant between God and us is one of mutual trust between God and Abraham and between God and us. As Rabbi Artson writes, for both Abraham and God, faith is the willingness to trust despite the reality of setbacks and suffering. Shabbat Shalom.
Tamo bat Shabbat Herschel HaKohen V'leya Shishim. Our sixth Torah reading can be found in Genesis chapter 17, verse 18, page 92 in the Chumash.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Merach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayomer Abraham el ha'Elohim elu Yishmael yichya lefanecha. Vayomer Elohim aval Sarah ishtecha yoled elecha bein v'karata et shemo Yitzchak. V'hakimoti apriti ito livrito lam lazaro acharav o Yishmael shematicha hine berachti oto v'hifreiti oto v'hirbeiti oto b'mod me'od 12 nesi'im yolid unetativ l'goy gadol v'apriti akim et Yitzchak asher תלך לך שרה על המועד הזה בשנה האחרת ויכל לדבר איתו ויעל אלוהים מעל אברהם ויקח אברהם את ישמעאל בנו ואת כל ידי ביתו ואת כל מקנת כספו כל זכר באנשי בית אברהם והיה מולד בשר עולתם בעצם היום הזה כאשר דיבר איתו אלוהים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'telchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Lech Lecha presents an amazing story. All by itself, it could be the basis of an epic for HBO miniseries, chock full of action, intrigue, and drama. When the story opens, we hardly know who Abram is, just that he is a descendant of Noah. God commands him to leave his clan and travel with his wife, Sarai, nephew Lot, and whatever persons and wealth they had acquired, to the land of Canaan to spread the word of the one and only Master of the universe. Not long after their arrival, a famine forces the group to go to Egypt, where Sarai is taken into Pharaoh's palace under the guise of being Abram's sister. And later, after a divine plague strikes the palace household, she is returned with force to Abraham, and they're all told to leave the country. Once back in Canaan, Lot moves on and settles in Sodom, where he falls captive to mighty armies. Abraham raises a small fighting force, defeats 4 kings, and rescues Lot. Next comes the painful, less than romantic triangle of Sarai, Hagar, and Abram, which results in the birth of Ishmael. 13 years later, God promises Abram he will be the father of multitudes and changes his name to Abraham and Sarai's name to Sarah.
They are each assured that Sarah will bear a son who will be the first of a great nation in partnership with God. The covenant is sealed when Abraham and all the males in his household are circumcised. Thus, in just a few pages of our Chumash, Lech Lecha tells a story of origins, faith, determination, and in no small part, courage. With unyielding courage, Abraham and Sarah persist despite danger, calamities, and isolation. This morning, we honor all of those who summoned the courage to battle breast cancer. And sadly, that epic battle continues today. It is a battle that is personal for all of us. In 1999, I experienced a small skirmish with breast cancer, went on tamoxifen for 5 years, and continued to watch intensively for signs of trouble. Just a few weeks ago, I realized that given my history and high risk, I had better tell my daughters, Rachel, who's 30, and Lily, who's 32, that they had to begin scheduling annual mammograms. But before I could even make those phone calls, I heard terrible news about the daughter of a friend of mine. Keely Youngblood is 30 years old, and she had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Last week, she underwent a double mastectomy and is now going into full-blown battle against this deadly disease, as are many other women at younger and younger ages. So my Aliyah today honors all the courageous ones who have been and will be among us, many of whom lost their battles, and many others who survive and persist in this war against the disease. Here is the battle cry. Make those appointments for mammograms. See the doctor when you find something suspicious, and encourage all of those who you love to do the same. Give money often to support research, education, and emotional support. We are the origin story of those who come after us. Let us make it epic.
Talmud et Bat Chaim Elka Shvi'i. Our 7th Torah reading, which will be read by Judy Marks. Genesis chapter 17, verse 24, page 93.
I'm going to offer a comment first. In these forthcoming lines of Lech Lecha, it says that Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old. Additionally, all the men of his house were circumcised, although they were not named. Ishmael, his son, is mentioned by name 3 times in these 4 lines. Perhaps this is to emphasize the feeling of compassion and concern that Abraham feels putting his teenage son through such a physical ordeal as this. It is extremely difficult to stand by and watch a loved one suffer. We do our best to muster up all the compassion and empathy we can for them when they suffer through these kinds of physical pain and ordeals. And if that pain causes our loved one to act less than graciously towards us, all the more so at those times we must find extra compassion within ourselves to show support and love. Not always easily done, because it ain't easy being human. When we act with compassion towards others, we emulate God showing compassion towards us. Baruchu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher barach banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayavraham ben tishim v'tesha shana v'hilmo basar arlato. Vayishmael beno ben shalosh asrei shana v'hilmo et basar arlato. בעצם היום הזה נימול אברהם וישמעאל בנו, וכל אנשי ביתו ילד בית המכת כסף, מאי בן נחר נמלוא איתו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yitkadav yikadash shemei rabah, bi'amad yirakirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala, v'izman kariv, v'imiru, amen. Yeshmei rabah mevorach, Li'alam li'almei Almaya, Yiparach v'ishtabach, V'yipar v'yitaman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal, Shemei l'kudesha brechu, Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Ta'amira mi'olama, V'yimeru, Amen.
Please be seated. Our Maftir Aliyah, page 93, verse 24. 93, verse 24.
Ta'amo, ma Shabbat Shimon v'ovo hakohen v'hen yoleya, Maftir Chazak.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Anavarach le'olam v'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam v'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'Avraham ben tishim v'tesha shana be'ilmo basar arlato, v'Yishmael beno ben shalosh esrei shana be'ilmo et basar arlato. Be'etzem hayom hazeh nimo Avraham v'Yishmael beno, v'chol anshe beiti, v'chol anshe beito yoled bait machane kesef, Ma'et ben Nachar nimlo ito.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We move forward in our Chumash to page 95, where Marcy Drelek will be chanting our Haftorah from the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, page 95.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nevim tovim, v'ratza v'divrehem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai Habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo, uv'Yisrael amo, uv'invi'eh ha'emet v'tzedek. Lama tomar Yaakov, Utadaber Yisrael, Nistara darki me Adonai, ume Elohai mishpati ya'avor. Halo yadata im lo shamata, Elohei olam, Adonai borei ketzot haaretz, lo yaf lo yiga, ein cheker litvunato. Noten liaef, koach uleinonim atzma yarbe. Vayafu ne'arim vayigahu, uvachurim kashol yikashelu. V'koyeh Adonai yachalifu choach, ya'alu ever ansharim, yarutzu v'lo yigahu, Yelchu v'lo yiafu. Acharishu elayim, ulumim yachalifu choach, yikshu az yadaberu yachdav, lemishpat nigrava. Miheir Mizraha, Sedek Yikra Ehu Leraglo, Yitain Lefanav Goyim Lachim Yard, Yitain Ke'afar Charbo, Kashna nidav kashto. Yirdafem ya'avor shalom, orach beraglav lo yavo. Mifal va'asaha, kore hadorot merosh. Ani Adonai Rishon, ve'et acharonim, ani hu. Ra'u yihim v'yira'u, ketzot ha'aretz, yecheradu, karfu, yava. Ye'etahayun. Ish et re'ehu ya'azoru, ul achiv yomar chazak. Vaychazek charash et soref, machalik patish et Olem pam, omer la devek tovu, vaychaskehu, v'masmarim lo yimot, v'ata Yisrael avdi, Yaakov asher becharticha, Zehra Avraham Ohavi, Asher hechazakticha miktzot haaretz, umeatzi leha karaticha, va'omar lecha avdi ataha becharticha, V'lo ma'asticha, al tira ki imcha ani, al tishta ki ani Elohecha, imatzticha af azarticha, af temachticha bimin, Zidki, Hein Yevoshu V'yikalmu, Kol Hanecherim Bach, Yehiyu ayin ve'yovdu anshe rivecha tivakshem v'lo timtsaem anshe mitzutecha yehiyucha ayin efes anshe milchamtecha ani Adonai Elohecha mechazik yeminecha haomer lecha al tiraha ani azarticha al tir'i tolat Yaakov mete Yisroel ani arzatich neum Adonai vegoalech kedosh Yisrael samtich lemorag charutz chadash ba'al pifiyot tadush harim v'tadok ugvaot kamotz tasim tears rehem v'ruach tisahem usara tafitz otam va'ataha Takil be'Adonai Bikdosh Yisrael tithalal. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer va'oseh hamdaber umkayem shechol kol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davarecha midvarecha achor lo yashuv rekam ki melech ne'eman v'rachaman ataha Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarav
Amen.
Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu v'la'alu v'tenefesh toshia b'mheira v'yameinu Baruch atah Adonai Mesameach Tzion b'vaneha
Amen.
Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu be'aliyahu hanavi avdecha uv'malchut beit David meshichecha b'mheira yavo v'yagel libenu al kiso lo yeshev zar v'lo yinchalu od acharim et kavodo Ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo shelo yichbe neiro la'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Magen David
Amen.
Al ha'torah v'al ha'avodah v'al hanvim Va'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Likdusha v'limnucha Lechavod ultifaret Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach Yitbarach Shimcha b'fi kol chai, Tamid la'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Yasher Koach to Marcy, as well as to Linda and Judy, and not to steal Gary's thunder, but to all the people who had aliyot or made comments today during our Torah service. I'm sure he'll get to those later. We will continue in our Siddur on page 151. Mindy Margolis will lead us in the Ashrei.
Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Odi Halucha Salah.
Ashrei Am
Shekachalo. Ashrei Ha'am Shadonai Elohav. Tehillah LeDavid Romim Chalohai HaMecha. V'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed. B'chol Yom Avarchecha V'halala Shimcha Leolam Va'ed. Gadol Adonai Hum Hulal Me'od V'lik Dulato In Cheker. Dor LeDor Yishamach Ma'asecha Ugvurotecha Yagidu. Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha. Ve'ezuz Norotecha Yomeru Ugdulatecha Asaprana. Zecherav Tuvecha Yabiu V'tzikatecha Yiranenu. Hanun Merachum Adonai Erech Apayim Udal Chased. Tov Adonai Lakol V'rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav. Yoduch Adonai Kol Ma'asecha V'chasitecha Yivarchucha. Kevod Malchutecha Yomeru Ugvuratecha Yidaberu. Lehodia Livnei Ha'adam Gevurotav Uchvod Hadar Malchuto. Malchutecha Malchut Kol Olamim. Umem Shaltecha Bechol Dor Vador. Someach Adonai L'chol Hanoflim. V'zokef L'chol HaKavufim. Einei Chol Elecha Yisaberu. V'atano Telahem Etach La Beito. Hoteach Et Yadecha. Umazbiach L'chol Chayratzon. Tzadik Adonai Bechol Deracha. V'chasid Bechol Ma'asav. Karov Adonai L'chol Korav. L'chol Asher Yikra'uhu B'emet. Ritzon Yirav Ya'aseh Ve'et Shavatam Yishma V'yoshiyim. Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav ve'et kol hashayim yashmi. Tilat Adonai yidaber pi v'yivarech kol basar shem kadsho li'olam va'ed. Va'anachnu nivarech yo mi'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah. V'anachnu nivarech yo mi'ata v'yad olam. Hallelujah.
Yasher Koach to Mindy. You now see the immediate past presidents of Sisterhood walking up, Rachel Joseph, Allison Feldman. In a moment, I'll lift the Torah from the podium here, and we will rise. Allison will lead us in the English for the prayer for the United States on page 148 in the Siddur. Then I will sing the prayer for Israel in Hebrew, and Rachel will read it in English. We now rise as the Torah is lifted, page 148.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all of the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
Prayer for Israel, page 149. Avinu shebashamayim, Tzor Yisrael v'go'ala, Barech, barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Ge'ulatenu. Hagein alecha b'evrat chastecha, ufros alea sukat shelomecha. Ushlach orcha v'amidcha l'roshecha, tzarecha v'yoatzecha, v'taknei beitza tova milfanecha. Chazek, chazek, et yedei meginei eretz kodshenu, ve'anchilei Eloheinu Yeshua, Bater et nitzachon, te'aterei menatata shalom ba'aretz, ve'simchat olam le'yoshveha. Avinu, Avinu, Shebashamayim.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Rock and Redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen.
We now return the Sefer Torah to the Ark, page 153.
Ye hallelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskrav Shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren li'amo, tehila lechol chasidav, libnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor leDavid, havu ladonai b'nei elim, havu ladonai kavod va'oz, havu ladonai kivod shemo, ishtachavu ladonai v'hadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod hirim, Adonai al hamayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'akoach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, v'yeshaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, v'yarkidem k'mo egel, Lebanon v'siryon k'mo v'neremim. Kol Adonai kotzei lavot eresh, Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yecholel Hayalot, Vayechesof Yarot, Uvechalot Kulo Omer Kavod, Adonai Lamabul Yashav, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Le'olam, Adonai Oz Li'amo Yitin, Adonai Yevarech Et Amo Bashalom Uvenucho Yomar. Ki lekach tov natati lachem Torati al tazovu et chayim hi lamachazikim v'tomecha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom Hashivenu Adonai Eilecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedesh
Please be seated. I'll invite Gary Limbick to join me up at the rabbi's podium to offer his announcements after Mindy Margolis and I offer a Misha Berach for the whole Lim, for those in our community in need of healing. Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzhak Yaakov, Serif Karachav Leah, Hu Yavarech V'Yarapeh Et HaCholim, Ruvain ben Rachel, Richard Miller, Tuvia ben Fega, Hu V'Freto bat Yotzes Hana, Aviva bat Sarah, Pinchas ben Elka, Deborah Daniel, Joanna Reed, Karen bat Sarah Chaya, Henya Chaya bat Malka, Hinda Tova bat Dina, Moshe ben Hana, Gedali Yosef ben Shendel, Benyamin Chayim ben Yonina Avram ben Rezel, David Shlomo ben Itka, Mary Mobley, Ron Rouse, Dina bat Delilah, Tzibia bat Hana Esther, Yehudit bat Rivka, Sandy Stern, Aliba bat Lina, Louis Saul, George Walsh, Elisa Walsh, Dorothy Krantz, Shoshana bat Malka, Marshall Bloom, Elizabeth Ballard Stein, Andrew David Washer, Kalman ben Batya, Sam Hagen, Todd Koh, Hugo Dollar, Reuven ben Sarah, Esther bat Naphtali, Wendy Minch, Carol Teplis Morch, Avram ben Sarah, Manasha ben Yosef, Ahava bat Karen, Karen bat Zahava, Terry Thornberry, Leah bat Miriam, Anthony David Klum, Ranit bat Bela, Lena Yosefa bat Haya Rivka, Azaria ben Henya, Hava Laser ben Sylvia, Bob Wong, Shmuel Avram ben Sivia, Haya Bahana, Louise Daneman, Rosalind Branovitz, Petty Pellison, Gamliel ben Avigdor, Levi Chaim ben Rivka Searle, Narik Fermania, Alan Weinberg, Vicky Flink, Ron Gimple, Simcha Rachel bat Tzipora, Sarah Leah bat Haya Pearl, Nolin Mizrahi, Miriam Leah bat Silpa Sarah, Leah bat Tova, David Beir ben Hana, Khalil ben Sabia, Pesha Rivka bat Minda Bluma, Ayal ben Ita Sarah, Ahuva Yehudit bat Yocheved Haya, Zohara Aviva bat Harab Rachel, Robert Horowitz, Freelam Lane ben Sarah, Maasha Brindle bat Devora, Missy Abigail Pound, Addis Jones, Sarah bat Malka, Mordechai ben Rachel, Anya Rachel bat Esther, Tzvi Ezer ben Batsheva, John Ward, Sarah Leah bat Rachel, Linda Walker, Shulamit Yehudit bat Rachel, Deborah McNeil, Yocheved Hana bat Menucha Bluma, David Shmuel ben Tova, Nachum Gershon Reuven ben Esther, Shlomo Hiskiyahu ben Sarah, Lily Aviva Hadassah bat Hana bat Sheva, Malvin ben Chaime va Cecilia, Moshe Benyamin ben Yaakov Alea, Yehuda Aryeh ben Golda, Rick Katz, Harriet Lewis, Charlene Mancini, John Ginn, Eliza Hana bat Devora, Rena Wasserman, David ben Hana, Rachel Haya bat Yafa, Sarah Esther bat Gittel, Freda bat Miriam Hana, Don Strader, Leon Stambler, Stacy Wynn, Davar Zizel bat Malka, David ben Eve, Tammy Goldberg, Mordechai, Feivel ben Tzipora, Liba bat Rivka, Ed McDonald, and we bring to our hearts and our minds others that we keep at this time.
Mishe Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
It's now our honor to invite our Executive Vice President, Gary Limbick, for a few words of greetings and announcements.
Good morning, and Shabbat Shalom. I was standing here thinking this is going to be a good 2-minute gig because I get to take off my mask, but did want to welcome everybody. Welcome. Shabbat Shalom to you. We're glad you're joining us this morning. Whether you're here in our sanctuary or joining us by way of Zoom, we're glad you're here on this beautiful and meaningful Worship in Pink Shabbat morning. I want to take a moment to thank the many, many people responsible for this beautiful service today. I take so much pride in our shul because so many of us congregants engage, and it really makes it a meaningful experience. Want to thank, of course, Jordan Foreman for leading us in Bezika de Zimra and the Torah service as well. I'd like to thank also Adriana Castiglione for leading us in Shachri. Thank you so much. Beautiful, lovely, thank you. And we're glad that you had an opportunity to participate in that portion of the service. You lifted our spirits. Thank you. I want to thank the many people, in addition to that, who joined us for the Torah service. Shana Duquette, Linda Lippett, thank you for the beautiful Torah reading. Susan Sandler, thank you for the beautiful words. Sherry Newman, thank you for the Aliyah today. Sheila and Dave Adelman joined us by way of Zoom. Thank you. And Dave, I owe you a big bear hug, and I want to wish you a happy birthday. Betty Bear, thank you so much. And Barbara Fromberg, thank you for your beautiful words. Judy Marks, thank you for your Torah reading. I see Esther and Michael Levine, thank you so much for participating in the Torah service. Marcy Dralick, thank you for your kind words today. And then Rosalind Conter, I owe you a big hug. I was hoping you would be here. Thank you. Yasher Koach to you. And Minnie Margolis, thank you so much for your beautiful recitation of the prayer for healing, and also for Ashrei. Allison Feldman and Rachel Joseph, thank you for leading us in the prayer for the United States and also the prayer for Israel. A big, big thank you to Rena Wolf, Deborah Elovich, Brooke Rosenthal, and Jennifer Rosenfeld for organizing this wonderful and meaningful Shabbat morning. This is truly one of the most uplifting, meaningful, spiritual experiences that I've had in a very long time, so thank you. I want to thank our Gabbai, Bob Tepper. Thank you, Baron Prusen, for being our greeter today, and I believe it's Neil Yarm, who is our Zoom master, and Paul Feldman, thank you for leading us in the Torah facilitation today, the Torah study. And in addition to that, Damon Fanuni, as always, thank you for being our AV technician. I am proud to announce that this year, Operation Isaiah raised over $20,000. We raised more money than any shul in any Jewish institution. We've always been leaders in this initiative. It's such a wonderful initiative, especially where we find ourselves in the pandemic. And a big thank you to our co-chairs, Allison Feldman and Rachel Joseph. Thank you to you both for making that experience and that endeavor so profitable. We are giving 75% of the proceeds to the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and then the JFCS Food Pantry is in need, so we're going to offer them 25% of those funds as well. Thank you as a congregation for always supporting that initiative. It's so important. We have a number of activities and events that I want to share with you. All the specifics can be found either on our website or in our e-blast. Did want to take a minute to sort of satiate your appetites and highlight some of these events. Tomorrow, here at the Shul in Soroki Auditorium at 3 o'clock, AA will be sponsoring the Marilyn Ginsberg Eckstein Cultural Arts Affairs. We're presenting the second annual Dr. Jerome and Betty Berman Memorial Concert. The concert is titled Sharing a Love of Music. Enjoy an inspirational afternoon of spirited music presented by the daughters of the late Dr. Jerome and Betty Berman, the daughters Ellen, Karen, and Sally, in conjunction with the Marilyn Ginsberg Eckstein Cultural Arts Affairs Fund. Tell your friends, bring loved ones, and celebrate the memory of Jerome and Betty Berman, two people who adored music and whose lives brought so much joy to so many. The afternoon will be an all-Beethoven concert. It'll feature David Coucheron, who is the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra concertmaster and violinist. It'll also be featuring Sheree Kruger, who's a cellist, Julie Coucheron, who's a pianist, and then William Ransom, who is also a pianist. Please register. Registration is required. Every year, we participate in a mitzvah opportunity at Rebecca's Tent, which is located at Shereth Israel. We need your help this year to feed the women at Rebecca's Tent. It is a homeless shelter for women located at Congregation Shereth Israel. There are 21 dates we need to fill during the months of December, January, and March. All you have to do is provide a dinner. You can cook the dinner or you can order it from a local restaurant. The number of folks that are at the shelter during the pandemic is fairly limited, so the cost is not that great, but the need is. So please reach out to Ann or Herb Alprin if you would like to volunteer, if you would like to either cook or deliver food for those women in the homeless shelter at Shereth Israel. Our blood drive is coming up. As you know, on a quarterly basis, AA sponsors a blood drive. That'll be November 7th here at Soroki Auditorium. Please perform the mitzvah of donating blood here at AA. Everyday blood donors help patients of all ages, accident and burn victims, heart surgery, and organ transplant patients, and of course, those battling cancer. In fact, every 2 seconds, somebody in the United States needs blood. The health and safety of our donors is the #1 priority of our synagogue. We will be following protocols. If you would like to register, please go to the blood.org website. And when you go to the homepage, there's a little box on the top. It's called Find a Drive. Just type in JWV, Jewish War Veterans. That'll take you to our registration site. I did want to tell you that Gail Solomon's birthday is a day before the blood drive. I can't think of a better gift to give Gail than the gift of blood. So please do register, redcrossblood.org, at the top right in the search feature, JWV, Jewish War Veterans. Thank you so much for everybody that participated today in this lovely service. I'm blessed to be a part of this AA family, and I thank you. Please join us for Mincha Ma'ariv services that'll begin at 7 p.m. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great day, and it's a pleasure seeing all of you here today. Thank you.
We're going to continue with the Musaf service on page 156. After Jordan offers the Hatzi Kaddish on 155, I'll ask you please to rise as we make our way into our standing devotional prayer. Page 156b. Please rise.
Yitkara v'kada Shemei Rabba B'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich ma'alchutei B'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayedechol Beit Yisrael B'galav izman kariv imru Amen Yeshmei Rabba mevorach Li'alav li'almei almayab Yiparach v'ishtabach v'yipar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh v'yitadnar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei kudsha b'rechu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata tamiran mi'alma v'imru amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot, U'Mevi Goel Ibnei Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer Ufoked U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Abraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Elam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atah Rav L'Hoshia Mashiv HaRuach U'Morin Hashem Mechakel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha B'Gevurot Umida Melach Melech Memit Umechaya Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah l'chayot metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei hametim Na'aritzecha v'na'akdishcha Kesod tziach sarfei kodesh Hamakdishim shimecha b'kodesh Kachatuv hayad neviyecha V'karaze el zevi amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Melech kol haaretz kevodo Kvodo malei olam mishartav Shoalim zeh lazeh Aye mekom kevodo Liumatam baruch yomeru Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo. Mimkomo uifen berachamim v'yachonam hamiyachadim shemo erev avoker בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים מאהבה, שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי. להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודל לך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודל לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם לעולם ועד, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודל לך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודל לך, כי המלך גדול, גדול וקדוש, גדול וקדוש, אתה, לה 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 לה, יה לה 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 לה, יה לה לה יה לה לה יה לה לה לה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. V'immeru. Amen.
Please remain standing for Kaddish Shalem, page 181.
Yikra v'ikra shemei rabab. V'yamari v'rakirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayerecho Beit Yisrael. Bagalav Izman Kari Vimru. Amen. Yehishmei Rabba Mevorach. Li'alam li'almei almayat. Yiparach. Yiparach v'ishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal shmei kudsha abrichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata damiran b'yoma v'imru. Amen. Tika b'atzot novaton l'cho Yisrael. Kodam avoni v'shmaya v'imru. Amen. Yesh lama rabba min shemaya v'chayim al revi l'cho Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'yalko Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Please be seated. It's my honor as we begin our worship in pink. The whole service has been worship in pink, but our portion where we're going to be hearing more about this very, very important morning, beginning with our sisterhood co-presidents, Jennifer Rosenfeld and Brooke Rosenthal, to get us started.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and greetings to all of you who are joining us live today in the sanctuary and virtually. We are so pleased you are here with us. I know personally I'm belling that all my sisters have done such a wonderful job today. This has been really meaningful for me. And Brooke had to do a little bit of research, and what she learned was for 14 years now, the Sisters of AA have been organizing this annual service to honor the survivors and victims of cancer. The Komen Foundation in Atlanta contacted the Shul and Rabbi Sandler, who sent Rena Wolf a message about how Komen was promoting worship in pink all over the city in churches, mosques, and synagogues. Rena got some handouts from them, invited a speaker, asked some congregants to participate, and here we are, 14 years later.
All of us have been touched by this disease. Whether it be a friend, a relative, or our own personal battle, all are affected by the plague of cancer. This service is to recognize the hardship, pain, and loss we know all too well, and to bring some healing, love, and support to those around us. Another purpose is to bring hope. Hope for a cure that can only come through scientific research and the financial support that research requires. Please consider donating your precious dollars to the 4 organizations we highlight today. For details, you can check the chat for links on the Zoom, or be on the lookout for the Wednesday e-blast.
So some of the organizations we are highlighting today, and I would like to say that next year when we celebrate 15, if there's some organization that's near and dear to your heart, please bring it to Sisterhood's attention. Angels for Angels. The team of Rena Wolf, Rosalind Conter, Donna Newman, and Susan Sandler will walk 60 miles over the course of 3 days in San Diego next month. They train for months, fly out to California, push themselves to the limit to raise money for the Susan G. Komen Foundation. Please consider supporting these 4 wonderful sisterhood members in their walk to eliminate cancer. Ian Friends Foundation for Pediatric Brain Tumor Research was begun by Cheryl and Phil Yagoda, the children of AA congregants Rita and Arthur Bodner, when their son Ian was diagnosed with a brain tumor as a young student here at the AA Epstein Preschool. Thankfully, even Ian is thriving today, due in part from the funding from IFF to focus on pediatric brain cancer research. I know that this foundation is also important to Jordan Foreman. His son, Josh, chose to honor his brother, Jared, with his Bar Mitzvah project by raising funds for Ian's Friends Foundation. So please consider joining the Bodners, the Foremans, and the Yagodas in supporting this foundation.
Turning Point Breast Cancer Rehabilitation. Turning Point is a nonprofit established in 2003 in response to the unmet survivorship needs of individuals with breast cancer in Greater Atlanta and has cared for over 40,000 patients. The clinic provides rehabilitation for individuals with breast cancer, including physical therapy, exercise, massage therapy, and counseling. Many of Turning Point services are complimentary, and a financial assistance program is offered to allow all patients access to care. Please consider supporting Turning Point. And additionally, please consider supporting Camouflage, Cookie After Guts organization, which she has already highlighted earlier today, which provides a lot of support to cancer survivors. We are grateful to Rena Wolf and Deborah Elovich for organizing all that you experience here today in our special service. Thank you to Rabbi Rosenthal, Jordan Foreman, and Adriana Castiglione for a wonderful job in facilitating a smooth Shabbat experience. And thank you very much to our Torah readers, speakers, and volunteers for your efforts and participation in today's service.
Keep fighting and keep healing. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's my pleasure to now invite Rena Wolf, who is going to introduce our speaker. She will be speaking to us virtually.
Shabbat Shalom. Do you hear an echo? I'm sorry. Shabbat Shalom. I'm so proud to co-chair this annual event with Deborah. All our participants have made this such a meaningful Shabbat. It's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Carrie Kozel is a senior physical therapist at Turning Point Breast Cancer Rehabilitation. As you heard, a nonprofit organization based in Sandy Springs that provides physical therapy, nutrition services, counseling, and massage therapy to women and men impacted by breast cancer. She has a doctorate in physical therapy from the Medical College of Georgia Consortium and is a lymphedema certified therapist through the American Physical Therapy Association's Academy of Oncological Physical Therapy. She's cared for patients with breast cancer for the last 11 years and speaks nationally on the topics of breast cancer rehabilitation and improving access to care. In the past year, I've become a patient at Turning Point. As I said to Carrie this week, it's uplifting to be with a therapist in their practice. I always go away feeling better physically and emotionally than when I got there. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Rena, for that lovely introduction. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for having me this morning. This is such a beautiful service that you have, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. What I want to do this morning is kind of talk a little bit about breast cancer, general breast cancer awareness, but then really my focus is on how do we move beyond just surviving and move into thriving. Survival is obviously the goal of treatment when you get a breast cancer diagnosis, but ultimately the reason for that goal is that so we can get back to the things that we love. And so I hope this talk can give you some resources yourself as a survivor or as someone who loves survivors. And so I just am so grateful to be here this morning. So 1 in 8 women and 1 in about 830 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime in the United States. And so what that means is this year alone, about 330,000 women will be diagnosed. So as of January of this year, that means 3.8 million women have a history of breast cancer. So those are either women who are currently undergoing treatment or have completed their treatment. And this will actually be the first year that breast cancer becomes the most common cancer worldwide. We do know that a woman who has a first-degree relative, so a mother, sister, or aunt with a history of breast cancer, her own risk then doubles for breast cancer. But we also know that about 85% of women diagnosed with breast cancer do not have a family history. And so it's really critical that both women with and without histories are aware and making sure that we're getting those screenings. Some other interesting things that we do know is that there are gene mutations. So the BRCA genes that can show mutations really increase our risk for both breast and ovarian cancer. So we know a woman who's positive for BRCA1 or BRCA2 has about a 50% lifetime risk of breast cancer. And that's compared to the general population who only has about a 13% chance of breast cancer. We also know that Ashkenazi Jewish women have a higher incidence of having a BRCA gene mutation. So in the Ashkenazi Jewish community, 1 in 40 women will be BRCA positive compared to 1 in 500 women otherwise in the United States. And because of that gene mutation prevalence, women who do have an Ashkenazi descent are then at a higher risk for developing breast cancer. Separately of that increased risk of gene mutation, we also know that Ashkenazi Jewish women are more likely to have dense breast tissue. And dense breast tissue basically makes mammogram screenings less accurate. It makes it more difficult to identify cancerous tissue within the breast. And so it is a known difficulty in screening, but separately of that, it's also an independent risk factor for breast cancer. And so we do know for those women that adding in MRIs as well as ultrasounds can really benefit and increase the chance of early detection. So kind of some takeaway from that, if you are of Ashkenazi descent, is definitely discuss with your OBGYN, your primary care physician, about getting genetic testing done. And so that's really critical to identify any potential mutations that would increase your risk for cancer. In addition to that, it's very important that you then also discuss if you do have dense breast tissue. So if you have ever seen that come back on a report for a mammogram, it's often listed as you get your letter in the mail that says your findings were normal, but just so that you know, you also have dense breast tissue. And so if you have seen that on a mammogram, it's really critical that then you discuss with your care team about the option of potentially adding MRIs and or ultrasounds to really increase that early detection. Something I also wanted to mention today is that we do know that the pandemic is going to ultimately impact breast cancer mortality. So what we know is that by 2030, we expect about 2,500 more women to die of breast cancer than would have if the pandemic had not occurred. And the reason for that is a delay in mammograms and a delay in so that early screening that we had to postpone, as well as delays in initiation of treatment for women who were diagnosed. So I'm going to put in my plug now that if you were someone who delayed their mammogram because of the pandemic and you are overdue, that it's really critical that you make sure that you get in and get that screening done. So generally some statistics, although we talked a lot about all of those things that about diagnosis and mortality, one of the things that's really incredible is from 1989 to 2017, we saw a reduction in breast cancer related deaths by 40%, which is an enormous number. Their survival rates for breast cancer are significantly higher than most cancers. We do know if a cancer is diagnosed in the breast in a local area, so it remains exclusively in the breast, the 5-year survival rate is 99%. If it's regional, meaning it's gone to the lymph nodes as well, that's still an 86% survival rate for those 5 years. And even distant, so metastatic breast cancer, so cancer that's spread to the brain or to the liver or to the bones, still has a 28% 5-year survival rate. If we look at all of those different classifications of diagnosis, the 10-year survival rate is 84%, and the 30-year survival rate is 80%. So those survival rates are phenomenal. But what's important to also think about is, like I mentioned earlier, is it's not just about surviving, because the goal of surviving is to then do all of those things that you love, care for your children, care for your grandchildren, participate in your congregation, all of the things that are important to who you are as an individual. And so really, we want to also look at how do we then ensure that people thrive after diagnosis. So we do know that in breast cancer patients that 60 to 90% of them do have some impairment that would be amenable to rehabilitation services. The research is really significant that says rehabilitation can not only manage side effects of breast cancer treatment, but it can actually have a preventative effect as well. We know it improves quality of life, improves function, and we know that exercise also helps reduce risk of breast cancer reoccurrence. So it's really critical that individuals get access to rehabilitation services. But unfortunately, what we also know is that only about 20 to 30% of patients are ultimately referred and receive those services. And so why does that happen? Some of it is about lack of education, and that's why I'm thrilled to be here today. The awareness piece is not there. People are often not prepared for the physical and emotional side effects of their breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. And if once they become aware, men and women often don't know where to turn when they can't do things like lifting their arm up to reach something out of a cabinet or lifting their child out of a crib. They don't know where to turn when they're fatigued from chemo and radiation. And often oncology providers and cancer providers across the spectrum don't know about rehabilitation services and what is available for their patients. And sometimes it's that their area lacks anyone with specialized oncologic rehabilitation experience. Another barrier to getting patients into services is because our healthcare system isn't designed to provide payment for one-on-one settings. The rehabilitation world is really designed for multiple patients at once and more of an outpatient orthopedic clinic. So if you've ever done rehab for a knee or a shoulder, there's multiple patients there at once receiving care. And that's really what the reimbursement is based on. And oncology rehabilitation services really requires a one-on-one setting, but it is more costly. And so our system is really not designed to cover the cost of the services for a comprehensive rehabilitation program. And so that's really where Turning Point comes in. And so we are, like has been mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization that provides comprehensive rehabilitation to breast cancer survivors with the goal of getting them to thrive. Our mission really is about getting that access to patients and also helping to eliminate barriers, so socioeconomic, racial, cultural, geographic barriers. And one of the beauties of being a nonprofit organization is we are able to provide care regardless of a patient's ability to pay. So we do have a financial assistance program that ensures that your financial situation does not prevent you from accessing care. So we do provide a vast variety of rehabilitation services for patients who are experiencing breast cancer. We see patients from the time of diagnosis, so before they even start surgery and treatment, to many years after. So we see patients all along the continuum, regardless of stage of diagnosis. We provide physical therapy, both in-person and virtual appointments, which allows us to access patients regardless of where they live across the state of Georgia. We provide lymphedema care, education, surveillance, management, and that's the swelling that can occur in an arm after a breast cancer surgery. We provide exercise classes, both individual and group. And then we provide extensive education for survivors and family members on a vast variety of topics. And those are all available virtual, free of charge. We do have specific oncology trained massage therapists on staff, as well as a counselor who provides individual and group sessions to provide for the emotional and psychological well-being of our patients. And then we do have a dietitian on staff who allows all of those critical nutrition questions to be answered as well. So we have served over 40,000 patients since opening our door. We see about 700 women and men a year, 750 of those being virtual visits. And 20% of our patients do receive financial assistance. And so we really do rely on our donors, corporate sponsors, and grants to ensure that we can continue to provide those services. And like I said, it allows us to not only provide care for patients who are unable to afford services, but it also helps us to supplement the reimbursement from private insurance companies, like I said, that are not set up to allow us to provide that one-on-one care. Another critical part of our mission is education of healthcare providers. We educate providers locally, nationally, and internationally. We actually have started a coalition that involves 6 different countries, part of our global initiative, that is really designed to increase access to care in underserved communities all across the world. And so we're constantly fighting for awareness and education from providers, and really anyone who will listen. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here this morning, to make sure that people know the services that are out there for them, and so that they can access those. Another critical part of what we do is to ensure that those racial barriers to care are addressed as well. And so we do have an Atlanta initiative project that specifically looks to serve the underserved Black community in Atlanta. And we also address those geographic barriers, as we have a rural outreach program that looks to provide care to the rural communities all across Georgia. So I so thank you for your time. I would love to put in a plug for things that you can do to help us, as you guys already so graciously mentioned. Your financial support would be so appreciated, but we would also love donation of your time. We have numerous fundraising events throughout the year, both smaller events. We have a golf tournament on the 24th of October. We have another one in December. We also have our annual Pink Affair every year. And so we always love and need volunteers. So if you can donate your time, that is greatly appreciated as well. And attending any of those fundraisers, we would love to have you. But most importantly, if you will spread the word, both to your own community, to friends, family, even people all across the country. If you have friends and loved ones who are breast cancer survivors, are still traveling that journey, please let them know that rehabilitation services are out there. And if they are not local to Georgia, please reach out to us. We are connected with the organizations across the country that provide similar care, and we would be more than happy to help connect your loved ones to those services as well. So thank you so much for letting me be a part of this beautiful service this morning. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Carrie, thank you so much.
Carrie, thank you so much for your presentation. It was informative, educational, and inspiring for those of us who are faced with the many issues involved in cancer diagnosis, treatment, and recovery, and all the positive aspects of life after. I grew up in a home that was filled not only with much love and humor, but also music. And music has the power to evoke the sense of memory in much the same way as the aromas of a brisket cooking in the oven, a freshly baked challah on Friday evening, or the scent of a perfume. It began with LPs of all the jazz greats: Ella, Sarah, Nina Simone, Louis Armstrong, Peggy Lee, and so many others. It then moved on to the keepsakes of my parents' forays into New York City and Broadway shows. I learned all the lyrics long before I knew the storylines of the plays. And from there it progressed to pop and rock and roll music, still on records, then shortly on 8-tracks and cassettes. Over time, the newer music we introduced was embraced by the adults. Always, always, there was Frank Sinatra, a long-loved personal favorite of my mother from her teens throughout her life. And for many years, I shared this musical ride with my sister, who was always on the cutting edge, and my husband, a keyboard band member, who still plunked at the piano and organ. Well into her 80s, my mother would hear a new performer on NPR and call to ask me to order the CD and to learn more about the performer. When I first thought of preparing these comments, I started to write down the lyrics and phrases of songs that brought back both happy and bittersweet memories. And as you can imagine, the list was never ending. Suffice it to say that these memories keep our loved ones with us, much as treasured photographs and mementos. I have music playing all the time, smiling, tearing up, and singing and dancing when no one is listening or watching. Whatever sense brings a remembrance, we would call those no longer with us. We celebrate those who survive and thrive, and we honor those who continue to provide care and research. To paraphrase, some days there won't be a song in your heart. Sing anyways. Shabbat Shalom.
And to Deborah and to our speaker, Carrie, for all your time and your wisdom that you shared with us today. And I'm very grateful to Sisterhood for just continuing to support and create this very, very special day. Let's bring our service to an end with Ein Keloheinu, page 182.
Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Adonenu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu, Nodal Eloheinu, Nodal Adonenu, Nodal Emalkeinu, Nodal Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha, Eketoret Hasamim. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalakenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehunot HaShamayim miyoser haaretz, Umoshav Yekaro b'shamayim imal, Ushchinatu zo, Begofei meromim, Hu Eloheinu ein od, Emet Malkeinu efes zulato, Kakatu betorato, Yadata hayom hashevota el levavecha, Ki Adonai hu Elohim, Bashamayim imal, V'aretz, Mitachat eino, Rakin lekavel chadam b'zecha. Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz, bayom mahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, U'shemo echad.
Please be seated. It's with great sadness this week that our community lost Bailey Olam, the sister of Goldie Weiss and Ann Olam. We pray that the Olam family is getting the care that they need during this time. We note the continuing Shloshim period, 30 days after passing, for Dr. Sylvia Arnold, the mother of Hal and Dorita Arnold, Bonnie Arnold, and Amy Arnold. Perry Baruch, good friend, life partner to Carol Keith and son of Cantor and Betty Goodfriend. Douglas Friedman, husband to Jeannie Friedman and brother to Robin Speisman. Catherine Mendel, the wife of Larry Mendel and stepdaughter to Joanne Mendel. Lionel Harris, father to Carol and Robert Glickman, and Alan Burnham, father to Stephanie and Brian Aftergut, Lori Burnham, and to Jeffrey Burnham. We also note the yurtzites on this, the 10th of Heshvan, to Anna Eisen, the mother of Gerald Eisen, Kenneth Gitlin, the brother of Dorothy Eisen, Victor Cates, the father of Michael Cates, A.R. Neiman, the father of Howard Neiman, Speck Landrum, the father of James Landrum. We also continue to walk with those who come morning and evening into our daily service, remembering Francine Tillum, mother to Mitzi Tillum and to Lori and Jordan Foreman, Barry Levenstein, cousin to Mitzi, Lori, and Jordan, Judy Bressler, mother to Richard and Mindy Bressler, Rosalind Schloss, mother to Karen Hanrahan and Andy Siegel, Danny Lippett, son of Linda and Alan Lippett, Cheryl Tuttle, the sister to Esther and Michael Levine, Jerry Wiesenberg, father to Andrew Wiesenberg, Ahuva Ben David, mother to Tova and Mark Cohen, Adrian Cohen, wife of Kelly Inney, Stanley Shiroki, cousin to Ivan Millender, Herbert Singer, husband to Joanne Singer, father to Mindy and Richard Bressler, Lisa and Eric Plasker, Cheryl and Michael Weiss, Henry Burnbury, the father of David Burnbury, Lynette Cohen, sister to Philip and Donna Newman, B. Blass, mother to Charlotte and Alan Kaminsky, Alan and Betty Blass, and sister to Donald Reisman, Stanley Bloomberg, father to Stacy and John Guerin, Steve Marcus, husband to Sandy Marcus, father to Larry and Brian Marcus, uncle to Bathsheba Fullenhall, Carol Wexler, mother to Jill and Robert Rosner, Jeff Wexler, and Ellen Pillsbury, Harris Pavlot, father to Arthur and Dara Pavlot, Pauline Cohen, mother to Stanley Cohen and to Walter and Lisa Cohen, Dan Melnick, husband to Diane Melnick, John Sherman McDade, husband of Marcia McDade, brother-in-law to Jeannie and Bob Tepper, Rose Berman, sister to Donald Reisman, Bella Haya Batsari, the close friend of Marilyn Winston, Shirley Bornstein, stepmother to Linda and Carrie Landis, Pepe and Alan Walken, Norman Arm, the uncle of Sheila and David Edelman, Demetrius Coffey, close friend of Alan Wexler. Have we omitted any names? We pray that their memory continue to be a source of blessing as we enable our microphones and stand in our room, sacred space together to recite the words and of the Morning's Kaddish, supporting one each other with these sacred words. Page 184. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemir Rabba Be'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute B'chayachon u'vyomechon u'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavorach le'olam u'me'omaya Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei dekudashah brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata ta'amiran be'olma v'yimru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Yaseh shalom b'imromav, yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael b'imru. Amen. We're going to conclude our service with a Don Olam. I'll invite Nancy Levine up to the lower podium to recite a benediction after Kiddush. Page 187.
Adon Olam asher Hashem malach b'terem kol Yitzir nivra liyeten na'asa v'chefto kol Azai melech shemo nikra Azai melech shemo nikra V'yacharei kichlod ha'kol levado yimloch nora V'hu haya v'hu hoveh V'hu yiyeh b'tifara V'hu yiyeh b'tifara V'hu echad mi'en sheni le'am shilo le'hakbira b'li reishit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra V'hu eli v'chayo ali v'tzor chavli be'etzara V'hu nisi umanos li menat kosi b'yom ekra menat kosi b'yom ekra בידו, הפקין רוחי בייתי שן מהעירה, ואם רוחי יביאתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, אדוני לי ולא יירא.
I'll offer Kiddush, and Nance Levine from the lower podium will offer a final benediction. Al Kain Barach Adonai Yom HaShabbat V'yikadshechu Savri Chavarai Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei Pri Hagafen.
Oh, okay. I'd like to thank Deborah Elovich and, can they be seated? Yeah. Please be seated. I'd like to thank Deborah Elovich and Rena Wolf for inviting me to talk about AA's Hesed Committee during Sisterhood's Worship in Pink Shabbat. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank my co-chairs Helene Lasky and Marshall Levine and our over 35 volunteers for the many kindnesses they have shared with our fellow congregants this past year. What is a congregation? Simple question, difficult answer. As a sisterhood member, my answer would list the many ways that sisterhood creates a concerned and caring community. Notably, how sisterhood enhances our holidays and simchas, supports our religious school and Ahava Early Learning Center, provides scholarships, provides flowers on holidays for our members who live in the Jewish home, and supports Worship in Pink charities. Through these activities and many more, sisterhood creates a concerned community where congregants are cared for. The Hesed Committee also strives to create a community where it was clear that congregants are cared for. Chesed means acts of loving kindness, and our volunteers are engaged in the mitzvahs of Bichur Cholim, which means visiting the sick, comforting the mourner, and welcoming new babies. Our volunteers call and visit congregants who are home from the hospital, and we deliver a light meal. The Talmud states that one who visits a sick person takes away 1/60th of their illness. The idea is that a simple act of visiting the sick helps lighten a sick person's suffering, provides a time when the recipient feels a community connection, that they are not isolated, but rather they are supported and comforted. All of these chesed activities are made possible by the Bichur Cholim Fund created by Vicki and Jerry Benjamin. For those who are mourning, we send cards, High Holiday, Mother's Day, and Father's Day letters, make calls, and attend Shiva Minyanim through Zoom. For members who have new babies, we deliver handmade baby blankets, and for members who become grandparents, we deliver a plant. All of these chesed activities are made possible by the Susie Habef Chesed Fund created by Morris Habef and his family. So many congregants have told me that the visits and calls from our volunteers cheer them up and distract them from their condition. Our volunteers have also told me that connecting with others in our congregation is personally meaningful and rewarding. In fact, many of our volunteers have ongoing friendships and share holidays with folks they have visited. With each act of chesed, we build a sacred community with deep Jewish commitments to one another. What is a congregation? Simple question, but the answer is difficult because it requires an understanding that our lives are fragile, that our world is easily interrupted and turned upside down. It is the combined total of our decisions to open our hearts and support those who are in need, in transition, ill, or grieving. The answer is our combined actions to alleviate a person's pain, to prevent isolation. It is our decisions to actively create a healing community through acts of loving kindness. It is a place where we care for each other. If you or a member of your family has received chesed services, Please become a Hesed volunteer and help us care for others in need. Mark Twain captured the essence of both our sisterhood and Hesed committees when he said, "Kindness is the language the blind can see and the deaf can hear." Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a good day.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you,
Shabbat Shalom,
everyone.
y'all. Thank you very, very much, ladies and Rabbi. Thank you.
Beautiful
Shabbat Shalom.
service. Shabbat Shalom.